All right, here we go. Today we have former Chinese-American gangster Mike Moy. Mike is a former member of the Fuk Ching syndicate, which is one of the most powerful gangs during New York's infamous Chinatown wars. After years as a made man of the gang, Mike joined the NYPD, where he served 25 years and became the 66th Precinct first Chinese detective. Mike, welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you, Vlad. Good to be here.
Well, it's your first time here. I want to start in the very beginning. So, your parents came over as immigrants from China?
Correct.
Okay, and this was during communism?
Yes.
Okay, this is something I can relate to also because I'm an immigrant from the former USSR. I came over in the 70s during the communist rule over there, so I'm very familiar with this whole overall situation. Now, your dad, he came over 7 years old as something called a paper son.
That's correct.
Describe what that is.
A paper son is when they come over to this country under a different name. They're given to a family to take care of them, and that family has American visa status over here. So what happens is usually it happens with the poor family. They will give their son away to another family who has legal residence in the United States and pass the son on to that family, and that family takes care of the son and hoping that the son will grow up and be able to get a job and send money back home.
So basically, there was a family in China that was pretending that your dad was their son.
That's correct.
Okay. And then your mom arrived around the same time?
My mom arrived. My father came here around 1946. Yes. And 1947, my dad came here, I believe. And my mom came here in 1966.
Okay, some years later. Okay. Now, you grew up in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And your parents were both working, but they were not making a lot of money. So you grew up in a very cramped situation, right?
Yes. Originally, we stayed in Chinatown, 26 East Broadway. It was a 6-story building, and we lived on the 6th floor. They were able to get that apartment when they first arrived to the U.S., my mom and my grandmother. And it was, it was pretty crowded. We had 11 people in that apartment at one point.
Okay, 11 people in how many bedrooms?
It was separated into 3 bedrooms. It's one of those old style Chinatown apartments where it's like a railroad apartment. Yeah, where all the bedrooms are like down the hallway, and there's no privacy except for the last bedroom where there was a door. Everything else was like covered with a curtain.
Right, so it was you, your dad, your mom, your younger sister, your grandmother, 3 uncles, and 2 aunts, and then another relative. So all these people in one relatively small apartment in Chinatown.
Yes, that's correct. You know, Vlad?
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. You know, a lot of, I've been on quite a few podcasts and interviews, and a lot of the interviewers, they asked like general questions. They had the chance to read the advanced copy of the book. But I have a feeling you did your D&D and you read my book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great book, by the way. So as you're growing up as a kid, before you actually start going to school, you couldn't speak English at all.
No, I didn't speak any English until I went to public school in kindergarten. And even then, I didn't speak a word of English until probably I was learning my ABCs then.
Why is it that you see this in different, ethnic groups, but particularly with the Chinese, for example, I interviewed Kid Jai not too long ago, and this guy grew up in America and still has a very thick accent.
Yes, because if you live in Chinatown and you grow up in Chinatown, it's like a country within a country. Everyone speaks Chinese there, and nobody speaks English. We're talking about the 70s and the 80s. So there was no need for anyone to speak English. Kid Jai learned English when he was in prison. That's where he picked up his English. And before that, it was just broken English. And for him to communicate with someone who spoke English is more like, with hand gestures and some broken English in between.
Okay, so you start going to school, and you're essentially one of the only Chinese kids in your school.
Yes, and throughout all those years, from I would say from kindergarten all the way up to middle school and high school. Yeah.
Right, and the kids started to bully you pretty badly.
Yes. Yes. Made me who I am today.
Right, they started calling you a communist, which is actually something the kids used to call me because I was the only Russian kid in a school, where it was all mostly white, white kids and so forth. And I used to always like get into fights and everything else like that. And, they probably didn't even know what a communist was, but still, I'm a communist and I'm from Russia, and, the US is sort of at war with Russia during that time. So I could really relate to what you were doing.
Yeah, and you know what? It was I would say it was in the 70s when they called me a communist. And I was like, what would these kids know about what communist? I didn't even know what communist was back then as a kid in the 4th grade, 5th grade. And I could relate to you because during the 80s, with the U.S. and the relationship between the U.S. and Russia, they probably call you a communist probably during the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. But in the 70s, they were calling me a communist. And I'm like, well, I didn't even know what a communist was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do these kids know what a communist is? I'm thinking back. Must have came from the parents.
Now, how bad were you bullied by the time you got to high school?
It was almost a everyday thing. It was almost an everyday thing. And, it's not something that's easy to talk about, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And, yeah, and you know what? I remember 2 kids, who bullied me. They were like relentless. Every day they had to make my life miserable, And you know what? Those 2 kids were actually Russian kids, 2 Russian kids. I'll never forget them. Even to this day, I will never forget them. One of them passed away already, but the other one, you know who you are.
Yeah, no, I remember this one time when I was in like junior high, this kid walked up to me and said, I could shoot you and get away with it because you're a Russian. And I remember punching him in the face. And he never said anything to me after that. But it was that type of stuff. Like kids would just say the cruelest, meanest things to you, like during that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to school, you're getting bullied, but right around this time, the gangs are pretty big in Chinatown. Now,
Yes.
were you aware of the gangs early on, or did that come a little bit later?
I was always aware of the gangs. Ever since I was a child, even as a child, walking around Chinatown with my uncle holding his hand, he would like pull me tight close to him and say, don't look at those guys in the corner, or like he would go across the street to avoid them. And then he would like point out, bullet holes, like on Mott Street, Pell Street, in the building, and say, oh, you see, that was last night's shooting. And he would like tell me what happened. And I was like a child, like 5, 6, 7 years old. And sometimes, like the family would like huddle together in the living room, talking, whispering about how, because I had 2 uncles who were around that age who, my grandmother was afraid that they might get, caught up with the gangs. So they would huddle up in the living room, talking and whispering about, how they were concerned about, them getting caught up with the gangs. And also they were talking about other relatives who have sons around that age who were susceptible to be in a gang. And so I would hear these conversations, like how to get out of Chinatown, and we would talk about my neighbor who lived right downstairs from us on the 5th floor, how the 2 sons got caught up in the gang life, and one of them got killed, and the other one was in and out of prison. And like I hear these stories about about other people, so I was exposed to it at an early age.
Okay, so there's the gangs, but there's also the tongs. So explain what a tong is.
The tong is like an association that consists of the elders, the respectable members of the community, the people who's been living in Chinatown for quite a while, and some of them may be able to speak English. So they formed this association to help the new immigrants coming into this country. And the towns are like divided by what province they came from, what village, and by their last name. So they already know like who's coming into the country, through the people in China who give them advance notice. And they'll set them up. They'll set them up with a place to live. If they need a job, they'll find a job for them. If there's any dispute, or if anybody needs to borrow money, like an immigrant that comes into the U.S., they're not going to be able just to walk in the bank and borrow money. So the Tongs is like a one-stop shop. They'll assist you with everything and anything that you need. Because if you come into this country and you don't speak any English and you don't have any relatives here and you're on your own, you have to rely on the Tongs. And a lot of these people in the community, in those times, they would pay the Tongs like a fee, depending on how much you make. It's like sort of like paying union dues or paying money to the church. There's based on how much you make, that's how much you pay the Tongs. And they help the community.
Okay, but how are the Tongs tied to the gangs?
Some of the members in the Tongs got involved with like illegal activities, such as some of their members. I'm not saying the board members, but some of the members maybe would get into the prostitution business, the brothel business, the gambling houses that they would open up, and they need the gangs to protect it, because if it wasn't protected, it would be robbed. So it goes hand in hand. So they're sort of like the enforcer, because remember, the Tongs are loaning out money to people as well. So people need to pay back. If you're an immigrant coming into this country and you want to borrow money to open up a restaurant or whatever you want to open up, they'll lend you the money, but you got to pay back. And if you don't pay back, then that's where the gangs come in as the enforcer.
Okay, so let's just say I'm a Chinese immigrant. I go to the Tongs and they give me some money to start a restaurant, right? I start the restaurant, 6 months later it fails, I shut it down, I'm broke. And I tell the Tong, hey, listen, I ain't got it. What happens next?
If you're broke, you have family members who's going to have to work off the money. You're going to be working to get that money to pay back the Tongs. Like I said, in Chinatown, it's a tight-knit community, especially back in the 70s, right? You're talking about the 70s and the 80s. You get the first wave of the immigrants coming in. They really don't have no place else to go. They can't just move to like Maryland or Indiana. There's only a couple of Chinatowns in the United States at that time. And where are you going to go? You're going to go jump from one Chinatown to the next Chinatown? They'll find you. They will find you. Right? That's why Kidzai took $2 million from his godfather and turned it into like, $6 million, charging 10% VIG. He never had a bad loan because they will pay back. Think about it. You get if that guy has 5 family members or 10 family members, they're going to all pitch in and work to pay off that loan. And even if they're in China, if they have relatives, they're going to have to send money to pay back.
Okay, but does it get violent when people don't, actually pay back the money?
They know the repercussions. There's no need to get violent because they know the end result. So the fear of violence is what gets people to pay the loan back. Sometimes they will get violent, but it's very rare, because you think about it, if you're in China and you don't speak a lick of Chinese, you have to rely on your own people, that small, tight-knit community. Where are you going to go? Right? And if you get killed, nobody cares. Nobody cares. The police not going to care. Look at all the cold cases in Chinatown. 38 cold cases unsolved. It's collecting dust, those case photos.
Okay, so you yourself, what led to you actually joining a gang?
There's a lot of reasons why someone would join a gang, but I can only speak for myself. Okay, I was sick and tired of the bullying. Right, and I just wanted, and also it was a form of brotherhood. Like I wanted a sense of belonging, all right, and I guess like a sense of like having a family.